pandemonium at Palace, but the Cup brings a break from the Premier League, and we got Bolton, and the last time we played them in the Cup didn't turn out how we'd have wanted. But without JJ Okocha, surely they can't trouble us, right? This is Talk of the Trinity.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Talk of the Trinity podcast. I am Baz Barrett. This is my magic eye puzzle. So if you're watching the visual version and you're not really interested in what's being said, try and solve the puzzle behind my shoulder. What is the shape picture that you can see? But in terms of no guesswork needed in terms of what you see, it is not a myth. It is not a mirage. I am reunited with Mr. Trinity himself after a week away. I would like to say he'd gone to the beach, but really just had a pilgrimage to Danny Ings' house, kind of walked there, waited outside for a bit. There was a hope on Saturday afternoon that he might be able to see Danny when he wasn't playing against Palace, which we'll come on to in a moment, but he didn't come outside, give him a cup of tea. So he went home. And here he is. Apart from that disappointment, Will, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. You know, nice little week away from you. But not a week away from all things Villa. And it seems, though, that in my absence, things have gone to pot. Maybe just a little bit in terms of results and also potential signings.
It is. And before we get on to kind of that disappointing news, one thing that never disappoints is our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby we are keeping you up to date with all things Villa, those transfers which are not happening, those reviews which are mixed currently at the moment, and all those polls whereby we're taking the pulse of the Villa fan base. Or if you want to see if any other episodes that we've recorded have magic eye puzzles behind them, you can go and check out our YouTube channel, whereby all our previous episodes are uploaded. Magic eye, not a guarantee. Or if you just want to listen to our audio versions, you can check us out on our audio providers, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, some other places. We're on FanHub. We're on non-fan hub. We're on all sorts of places. And the next is going far and wide, because by the time you're probably listening or watching this podcast, our very own Mr. Trinity will have been a guest star on a West Ham preview podcast, which we will allude to, give more details of on our Twitter page, and also perhaps when it comes to our West Ham preview episode later in the week. But before we get to West Ham, we've got to look back very, very briefly in terms of a very disappointing Saturday afternoon at Selhurst Park. Palace 3, Villa 1. Don't really want to talk too much about the game, really, to be honest. I mean, it started off well, then it went to pot. Can't really defend particularly. I mean, since we've last been on air, confirmed that Carlos is out for most of the season. So also a different lineup as well for the game on Saturday, different formation, very different lineup, different formation in the space of 3 games. Conceding plenty of goals, so makes sense that the answer was to go and get a striker. But the striker deal's fallen through, if you've seen in terms of Sarr from Watford. He is not coming to Villa. As of time recording, doesn't look like it's happening. So, as Will said at the outset, absolutely correctly, absolutely all sorts going on at Villa in the last week. Unpack that. What are your thoughts?
Mate, Palace, they gave us a bit of hope right at the very start, didn't they? That long ball forward, long pass forward from Tyrone Mings, the flick on from Bailey. Watkins' finish was superb. And let me tell you, Ollie Watkins deserved that goal after his performance against Everton. He was top notch, top rate, wasn't he, with his 2 assists? Really showed why he should be in the starting 11. And I do feel that he should be. However, I don't think he's the only striker who should be in the starting 11. It was a strange shape to go with. I can appreciate the 4-3-3 because that mimics Palace. However, the 4-3-1-2 worked well against Everton. I'd have liked to have seen the same. There was the first goal that went in was hard to believe that beat Emi Martinez. The penalty, obviously, was a great save from Martinez, the 3rd Aston Villa penalty save of his career in the Premier League. Only Mark Bosnich has more with 5. And then the last goal, I mean, I saw some fans on Twitter saying that it was rubbish defending from Mings and whatnot. Yet there's a ball round the outside from Sarr, which completely takes Cash out. Konsa, I don't know whether he was at Selhurst Park or not on Saturday. I don't think he was. Ball gets put into the box by Mitchell, a fantastic ball. And Mateta, who I've just taken out of my fantasy football team the day before, of course, scores. And, you know, I've had people saying Tyrone Mings was at fault. I've said he wasn't, in my opinion. He was the only one in the box trying to actually defend. I know nothing about football because I've defended Tyrone Mings. You just think, lads, we need Callum Chambers in there. We need Chambers and Mings, who were our strongest centre-back pairing of last season. And we need a set formation and an identity. We need, Steven Gerrard wanted to play possession-based football, and he knew that we weren't going to be able to do it straight away, and that he'd build it up. And eventually we'd be one of these teams that controlled games and took our chances and knew how to open teams up. I wouldn't be surprised if all of our wins came when we had less possession than the opposition under Steven Gerrard, And it's a shame because we've had some great performances under him. Man City at home in the second half, we were fantastic. Southampton wasn't the greatest performance at home, but we did enough and we broke and scored the 4 goals. Leeds away was scintillating. Leeds at home in the first half. Patches against Leicester at home. It's just one of them where we don't have that consistency that Gerrard craves at all. And it's something he needs to work out. But he needs to have consistency. We need to stick to a consistent formation and line up as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm gonna play devil's advocate a little bit. And it's gonna go on to the wider questions we're gonna have about the Sarr non-signing and some of the discontent that is beginning to be emanating from the Villa fan base about Gerrard and the team and where we're going. In terms of the best performances there, you mentioned under Gerrard. I think the word used for a couple of them was patches, halves. And I think after the amount of time that he's had in charge, and you mentioned in terms of no consistency in selection, is there enough extenuating circumstances to say it's not really Gerrard's fault, or is it a position whereby after this period of time, and especially for pre-season, that performances, we should be performing better than in patches in games which we may or may not lose? Because some of those, in terms of obviously Man City was a good performance in the second half. If you're being harsh, we still lost. Southampton, probably one of the best performances. Leeds, is that enough in your view after not quite a year in charge yet, nine months, to quell some of the discontent that is beginning to emanate? Does he need more time?
No, it's not enough. I think that to get rid of him now, unless he's lost the faith of the owners or the dressing room, and I'll be completely honest with you, I'm not sure whether the dressing room are 100% on side of him. And this is with no knowledge of what's going on in the Villa dressing room or whatnot, but it just doesn't seem like maybe he's got the backing of all of the players. I think unless he's lost the dressing room, lost the owners, I think you've got to keep him until at least the Nottingham Forest game. You know, that's only 10 games. You've still got 2/3 of the season left, and you can build enough to still get top half and to push on for Europe if you were to get rid of him. If you were, he needs a full transfer. He needs this summer transfer window. He needs to make some big signings as well. But I don't think it's all him. I think it's a mixture of him and the players. I think from a him point of view, it's the reluctance to settle on a formation and the reluctance to drop some players who are underperforming. It does seem like he has some favourites. JJ Ramsey needs a break. He played very well against Everton, needs a break. John McGinn hasn't been the John McGinn that we know and love for a while now. And you sort of think that Douglas Luiz deserves a chance. Maybe Luiz isn't getting one because he hasn't signed that contract yet. Yep. Does Sanson deserve a chance? You know, does Buendia or Coutinho in centre mid, or does he need to change to a 4-2-3-1? And Konsa should be nowhere near that first team. If somebody came in with 15 million for Konsa at the moment, regardless of the fact that we've only got Chambers and Mings left, I'd be selling Konsa. He's just not what he was. He hasn't been the same person since John Terry left the coaching staff, and that's something that was pointed out to me earlier in the week. But I think it's as much the players. You know, he's told them the way that he wants to play. He's told them what he needs from them, but they're not doing it. They're not of the ability maybe to carry out the instructions that he wants. And you look at the team that played on Saturday, there was one change from last season in regards to the players who started the match, and that was Boubacar Kamara. And we've all said all season long, Boubacar Kamara has looked absolutely quality. He's been our best player in most matches. You think if Diego Carlos had been in there as well, the result wouldn't have been the same, but unfortunately Carlos is out for a while. We need to improve on these players, and getting in players who are the ability of Kamara is only going to help. I think there's a lot of players there that you could sell. I don't really think there's any player who you wouldn't sell at the moment, except for the new guys. And out of the old ones, maybe Matty Cash and Mings, you know, because for me, you've got Mings who, I wouldn't sell Ramsey either, to be fair, but Mings, who's a leader, he shows that when he plays, he transforms us, he gives us confidence, he leads by example. Matty Cash has improved a hell of a lot since that patchy period he had last year. And then JJ Ramsey, he's young, he's going to be up and down for a little while yet. But I think anybody else potentially could be on their way.
I want to sell Martinez. Personally, we're not going to get a better goalie.
I don't think we will, though. Martinez hasn't been himself for a season or so. He wasn't great last year.
I think, I'd say in terms of comparatively speaking, compared to his standards of the previous season, maybe there was a dip. He's still probably one of our better performers. I mean, I suppose the Palace game summed it up. Still saving penalties. You know, if that's a goalie not playing very well. I mean, I in terms of Konsa, if a sensible offer comes in, you have to consider it. I think 15's too low in this current climate, especially the closer you get to transfer deadline day. People get more desperate. Price. I mean, Everton will have 6 players injured by this time next week, so price of doing business goes up. Mings, again, early on in the season, pre-season, I suppose there was talk about Newcastle coming in. I mean, they maybe have their sights higher after their start to the season, where they've been playing very well, unbeaten. A bit of a seesaw game against Man City, which probably most people expected them to lose fairly comfortably before the start of the game, and you know they did very well, you know, in terms of getting that point. But the point you make about Konsa in terms of the training is an interesting one in terms of it makes sense in terms of since John Terry left, he's not as good. But don't you bring a manager in to improve players? I mean, in terms of the amount, Martinez, we just talked about there. I mean, Gerrard isn't the goalkeeping coach, so in that literal sense, he's not. But the drop off in the players, it could be all sorts of things. It could be that they're not behind Gerrard. I agree with you. I don't think so. But we're not in the dressing room. You can't rule it out. But you mentioned Cash has got a more consistent level of performance, but there's not too many others who you could say have improved since Gerrard came in. And as we've touched upon all sorts of reasons as to why that may. I agree with you about Ramsey. He needs a rest. I mean, you'll potentially be in a better position than me to remember the Twitter account which highlighted the average positions on Saturday, and Ramsey's was covering the left back, I think, in terms of the field. That wasn't one I spotted. We will get the credit if we can remember it whilst we're recording. I think it was Villastato from recollection. So, needs a rest, I agree. But at some point, ultimately, I agree with you in terms of now it's too soon to talk about getting rid of a manager 3 games in. That's knee-jerk season, especially for a transfer window shutting. It needs the rest of the transfer window. 10 games was that point. Pre-season preview that we had. Check out on our audio YouTube providers. The World Cup. 10 games is a bit earlier. That 10 games, the World Cup break, I think decisions will be made. If we're bottom 5, I mean, regardless of whether we think it's right, wrong, more time. We just look at what happened to Dean Smith last season. Beat Man United, a month later, or 6 weeks later, he was gone. Gerrard won't get more time than Dean Smith in terms of that part of the season if we're not looking like we're top 10. If we're in the top 10, he'll get more time and it'll be fine. But yeah, bottom 5, worst case scenario. Because I think we'll talk about it more in terms before the upcoming games. There's going to be a clamour. Next 3 games, West Ham, Arsenal, Man City. I mean, we'll do our predictions as we go along. It's not the biggest stretch in the world to say 0 points. I mean, I think we're playing West Ham at a good time, which no doubt the lads on the West Ham podcast you have been on will be very happy for us to say, basically, you're just as bad as we are in terms of that. But we all remember the nightmare situation we had at home to West Ham last season. Arsenal, worst time to play them. It's currently started like a rocket. And then Man City, well, they're Man City. So I think we need to have that 10 games in mind, because purely if you look after 6, we could be bottom after 6. We could be top 4 when we win all 3 games, and in your prediction league, we'll be top of the league. So everything will be fine. But in terms of that transfer window, we mentioned it, and we talked about it briefly at the start. Sarr, that deal for Watford, fee of about 25 million, talked about, fell through. Rumours going around, personal terms, couldn't agree on. Maybe Watford wanted Cameron Hart from loan, and we didn't agree with that. That's rumours. John Piercy, amongst others, have got that covered. Firstly, if we only had the money for 1 signing, which we don't know, would Sarr have been your first choice? If we had the money for several signings, say we got 50, 75 million, put the money down on the table regardless, or would there have been a price for Sarr where you would have gone, you know what, we can spend that money elsewhere? Because alluded to the defensive problems, it was a bit Harry Redknapp in terms of, we got a problem with the defence, let's go and buy another striker. For me personally, if he was one of 3, I mean, I've previously said we need another striker or attacking player, so I don't necessarily disagree with going in for Sarr. But along with a centre-back, probably another defensive midfield cover player as well. If that was a 3-man package, that'd be fantastic. If it was Sarr or nothing, I'd be a little worried based after the first 3 games. What are your thoughts in terms of the transfer? Maybe might have been, probably not going to be, in terms of the last few days.
Disappointed about the Ismailia Sarr. Though there is the conspiracy theories out there that the rumour came out about Sarr because there was pressure on Gerrard after losing to Palace, and suddenly he's not signing. I mean, there's lots of different rumours about Sarr out there saying that he hadn't had his medical, that he has had his medical, that it was him who couldn't agree personal terms and Watford couldn't agree the structure of the deal. Personally, if we had to get one player in, Ismaila Sarr would not be the player. We need a centre-back. Above and beyond anything else, we need a centre-back. We need one who can come in, who can force their way into the first team, who can then push out another centre-back at the start of next season when Diego Carlos comes back, and potentially be in the back two with Diego Carlos. Kaletakar at Marseille, he's got a year left on his contract. That's the bloke I'll be looking at. His range of passing is fantastic. We signed a few players from Liga recently. And I think on top of that, he's a very good, highly rated defender. Otherwise, you're going to be spending a lot of money on other players, other centre backs around Europe. So I'd go after Kaletakar first and foremost, or another centre back, whoever that may be. I don't think we need a central midfielder. I think as much as people are desperate for a number 8 to come in, it's those same people who were saying that Douglas Luiz is best as a number 8. Douglas Luiz hasn't had a chance this season. He hasn't played as a number 8. Give Douglas Luiz a run in the first team. And if he doesn't stay next season, well, do you know what? At this point, I don't care. He doesn't stay. If he gets us into the top half and gets us into Europe, he can go to AC Milan or anywhere else with my best wishes. I'll, do the job that we need to do and then clear off. If we could sign a few players, though, then definitely a winger. If we're going to go 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3, we need a winger. I mean, I would put Watkins out wide and have Ings up front, or Archer, and I'd put Bailey out wide as well. I think if you've got the 3 behind the 1, you've got Ramsey who could play out wide, you've got Buendia, you've got Coutinho as well. You've got McGinn who can play as a 10. You've got an abundance of players, and I think if you want 2 players in a pivot, you've got Nakamba, you've got Booba, you've got Louise, you've got Iro Benham, you've got Chambers. So we've got enough players who can play there at the moment, and we can get through to the January window with the midfielders that we've got. You've got Samson as well, with the midfielders that you've got. So centre-back would be my biggest priority. And I'd go hard on a top quality centre-back, if not Kaletakar at Marseille, Indica in the
The joy of live recording meant you may just have seen the Gremlins, as outraged as Will was when he found out Danny Ings wasn't playing. So just to sum up the points that we were making, need to go and get another centre-back. The bloke from Marseille looks all right.
Kaletakar.
Yeah. And I'd agree, centre-back first, striker second. I'd think about perhaps a number 6, but that would be near the bottom of the list. Well, not priority. But speaking of what is a priority, Tuesday night, Bolton away in the League Cup. And just going to check my notes. Nope, don't know anything about Bolton. They're in League One, I think. But it's been picked for TV, which is usually a sign that the TV company thinks that there's a shot on the cards, because especially when Villa gets selected, there's usually no other reason. So in terms of that game away from the cameras, the expectation usually is you play the reserves. Based on what happened Saturday, would you play the reserves or would you play the first team?
Nope. I would play as many players as I can to give them confidence to go and win the match. The only player I consider resting, or 2 players even, one, would be John McGinn, though. I think he probably needs a good performance as captain and anyway to kickstart his season. So we'll leave him in potentially at the moment. I haven't decided yet. The other one who I would rest for the game is Luca Dean. He's had a torrid fortnight. Own goal against Everton, penalty against West Ham, against Palace, missed the sitter against Palace as well. Let's put Augustinson in. Let's give him some minutes. The biggest question, though, Baz, is going to be what formation does Gerrard play? And would you also play your strongest team if you could?
I wouldn't play 4-2-3-1. I'd go more attacking 4-3-3. I think against Bolton. I think you got to go with positive intent. Bit more research. Bolton lost at home, 2-0 to Sheffield United on Saturday. But they're currently 7th. 8 points from 5 games, just outside the playoffs. So they're in a relatively happy place. They were in real trouble a few years ago. But in terms of full strength team, I think it has to be stronger than what we would have thought when the draw was made a week ago. I mean, in terms of whether you consider this to be your strong team or not, you would, I suspect. I'd play Danny Ings. Need to get him in terms of just get some goals. He scored obviously against Everton, got dropped. I think we need to get the confidence up again. Maybe might play Olsen perhaps in goal. But yeah, I mean, I see your point in terms of McGinn. He needs a captain's performance really to cement his I say place in the team, but just his captaincy. People maybe in some quarters scratching their heads as to wasn't there a need to replace things. A couple of good performances from midfield where he drags the team by the scruff of his neck. Yeah, that puts that a little bit to bed. But yeah, I mean, I won't play Ramsey, as you said. I think he needs a rest. But yeah, I mean, it'd be a half and half as opposed to what potentially we would have seen or thought we would have seen a week ago of 11 changes. I mean, in terms of the defence, I'd have Chambers as first choice. I agree you had a Konza. Whether you get him in the team or whether you play Konza, try and get him into some confidence with a clean sheet. But yeah, I mean, it's Chambers match fit. I'd play him. But Bolton, in terms of not too much to say, as you may have guessed about them. It'll be probably a decent atmosphere, mainly because Villa have got 5,000 tickets. But a must-win game for Villa in a tournament whereby you might not necessarily put it near the top of the list to begin with. But I'm going to focus on Villa. Simple question. Are we going to go and get a win, or is it going to be a cup set?
I think we get the win. Gerrard's favoured formation at the moment has been the 4-3-1-2. That's the one we've had the most success with. That's the one I'd use. I'd have Martinez, Cash, Chambers, Mings, and Augustinson, unless Mings is still carrying his knock. And then I might put Feeney in ahead of Konsa. I'd have Boubacar. I'd actually swap the other 2 centre mids for this game, and I'd put Louise in, I'd put Sanson in. I'd have McGinn on the bench and bring him on with half an hour left. I'd have Coutinho behind Watkins and Ings. And I think we're going to get the win. And I think it's going to be a nice big 3-0 win for us with our strikers getting the goals. Watkins will get 1, Ings will get 2. And we'll all think that we're going to go and win the cup before we play West Ham at the weekend and then lose. And Sunday we're going to be relegated again.
So my prediction is going to be in the style of what we need to do on Tuesday. No messing around. Just get in, get the result, get out. 2-1. So on that bombshell, we both predicted a win, which it worked for us once so far this season, didn't the other time? I mean, I unfortunately was right in terms of Saturday, but we will get back on that winning bandwagon on Tuesday. And the bandwagon that never sleeps, the bandwagon you never want to get off, is our Twitter page @Trinity, whereby we keep you up to date with all the Villa news, action, signings, non-signings, and everything else in between. You can check out our YouTube channel, Talk of the Trinity, whereby you can see our wonderful visages sometimes, not others, but you get a bigger screen to watch it on. Or if you're traveling, relaxing, anything else you're doing on your holidays, you can check out our audio providers, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. Others are available. We're also on FanHub. But before I pass you over to Mr. Trinity for his final thoughts, thank you very much for listening again. Hopefully you enjoyed the game on Tuesday. Keep the faith. We'll be back.
Cheers, Sarr. Thank you very much. Make sure to join me chatting with the Cockneys, where I'll go and try and convince them how great we are as a team and that we'll win, and they'll laugh at me. And yeah, it doesn't turn out great in the end for us. Big love to Connor Sherry. I know you've been having a bad time again recently, but you know, all things happen for a reason in regards to the people who have been a little bit naughty and said some stupid things, and thank God they've been banned. Apart from that, let's hope that we stay in the cup a little bit longer than a PG Tips tea bag over the course of the next couple of days. I'm Villa till I die. Is Villa till he dies with his beauty. Is it a lion on the... It doesn't matter anyway. I'll tell you next time. Cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. Up the Villa.